This conference will now be recorded.
All right, thank you. Meeting's called to order at 7:08. We have Judy, Austin.
Yep, I'm here.
John Kopak,
Yep, I'm here.
Jesse Burnham,
Yep, I'm here.
Angie DeSanto. Where is Angie? Angie, are you here somewhere? Huh, Angie's not
Okay,
here.
now, no, I was unmute, I was muted.
Okay, yep, there you are. I see you.
Okay,
And Charles Funk.
And
And did I get you, Garth?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
You did now.
I see you there. All right, and Garth. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. I'm gonna seat John Kopak for Carl Falsgraf. Next agenda item is communications. I have none. I have 2 opportunities for public comments tonight. Where I usually have them does not seem to be very popular these days, so I'm going to keep it there and add another one. So if anybody has any public comments that they want to make now, they could. I've heard a lot of crickets for the last few meetings. All right. Approved minutes of the regular meeting Thursday, February 25th, 2021. Does anybody, well, I need somebody to make a motion. So I'll need somebody to make a motion to accept those minutes.
John Kopak, so moved.
John's a first. I need a second.
Jesse Burnham, second.
Jesse, second. Are there any corrections?
Cheryl's asking about something, but she's on mute. Cheryl, you're on mute.
It was hiding. I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Garth. The superintendent's letter only requested the 17,500 at the meeting, and that is all I recall hearing.
Correct.
Okay, maybe I read the wrong minutes. I thought the minutes said that we were requesting. I thought the minutes said that he requested more than that.
Not that I'm aware of. I think the motion, let me just look back again at it.
Motion says to approve the request by the Board of Ed to expend 17,500. Do you see it from the BOE non-lapsing?
Right.
Oh, I see. I apologize. The letter only said the 12,000. I thought those were 3 different things. That the 17,500 is the thing, and they broke it down into 2 parts.
Correct.
I apologize. I apologize. I didn't understand that.
Yeah, the language could be sort of a little strange, let's say.
If you're paying attention, it's not. It's pretty clear. Thank you, Chuck.
Okay, very good. Anybody else have any corrections, anything they noticed in the minutes that we need to address? I thought all things considered, they were fantastic. I guess a motion has been made to accept. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Judy,
Judy.
you're abstaining, right? Yep. Thank you, everyone. Motion passes. New business. We're going to jump right into it. Catherine, you're up. Fiscal year 21-22 Selectmen's budget presentation.
Okay, bear with me a little bit. John, can you let me share my screen?
Can I just say something that there's a lot of noise coming around, and when you're
Yeah.
not on mute, there's some background stuff. Probably hear that too, right? I think. Thank you, Angie.
Yep.
How about if there? Okay.
Thank
Now
you,
do you
Angie.
No. John, can you allow me to share my screen? You're the organizer, so you need to make me a presenter. Is John?
Hey, John, are you there? Might be at a snack break right at the moment.
Actually, no, he hit the thing to,
Okay.
I think he's there. I'm just waiting for him to allow me to share my screen.
I'm sorry, I'm here. Who am I making a presenter?
Catherine.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Go ahead, Catherine.
Not a problem. I'm going to share this screen. Can you see blue?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to do a little slideshow. Can you see fiscal year 2021-22 proposed general government budget capital improvement plan?
Yes.
Does it look okay? I can't tell because
It
I'm not.
looks fantastic. And Ashford's even spelled right. It's great.
Okay. All right. So this is just a quick overview before we get into the detail. Okay. So, and it's the general government budget and the capital improvement plan. I hope it's okay if I do them together in overview, and then we'll go through one, then the other after. Okay.
That's great.
Okay. Thank you. So the Board of Selectmen respectfully requests $3,527,718 for the general government budget. It represents an increase of $91,135 or 2.65% over the adopted this year's budget. Any questions?
Nope.
Stop me anywhere.
Yep. Oh, that looks good.
Whoops. General expenditures. What I did was I looked at the larger expenditures in the budget. So I'm just highlighting them here. There are certainly other ones and we'll go through them. But in general, our recycling transfer station, the waste disposal fees, we've gone up, I think, 35,000. Wages. Okay, we have an echo.
Yeah, who's somebody's got a, I'll turn mine down.
Wages, employee benefits, health insurance is right now, we've heard it's a 10% rate increase. Babcock Library, they've asked to be restored to their fiscal year 19-20 level, which was, so that's an extra $10,000. And switch over from COT records management system to IQS. And I'll clarify that for you as we get into the detail. But in general, the highest levels of increase are in these areas. Okay. Revenues, and Cheryl, if you want to jump in anywhere, that's fine. Sometimes I get a little fuzzy on where we stand with the revenues. If I understand correctly, they're still unclear. You're on mute.
We did get figures from them, and then I included that in with the Board of Finance budget package, but they're still not solid.
Right. Our interest on investments we anticipate a decrease from $50,000 to $6,000. So that's a loss of revenue. Okay. Whoops. So that's just in general, a very high level, broad brush. Would you want me to wait and take you through the capital improvement plan after, or can I just take you through right now with that?
Yeah, Catherine, why don't we what do you think about the idea? Why don't we go through this budget first, and then we'll tackle the capital budget on its own. Maybe that would be clearer.
Perfect. Okay, so I am going to move this over here. And these are the details in the budget that you all can see that's out on the meeting materials. So going through this budget, and I know that all of your board members have printed copies. I don't know if the other people who are on the line have a printed copy, but I'm going to kind of take you through. We have our Board of Selectmen. We have an increase of $6,985. Part of that is an increase in the executive administrative assistant to the selectmen. We also have a $400 increase in the contracted services, which includes a $30 a month increase in the postage meter lease. Going down through town council, let's see if I can get this right. We have a bit of a decrease, small decrease, if you will. And then when we get to information technology, we have an increase of, bear with me, I got it right here. Overall, 4,442. And what that really is speaking to is that we actually have a 5,594 increase that has to do with replacing our very old server. And it's, I believe it's 7 years old, and it's past its normal life of service. Okay, Knowlton Hall. This one's a little harder, will be a little harder for you to follow, because what we have here is, I think we have some monies that we ended up moving. I'll just take you like this to look at that one. You'll see nothing's changed here.
So Catherine, under contracted services,
Yes.
Do we have an idea what's happening with that? Why is that?
So that's the one I was referring to that has to do with the server needing to be replaced.
Oh, okay.
So what you'll see under there is actually within the 38,761, there's 5,594 that is for the server.
Okay, actually, what I was asked, again, no worries, good answer.
Included?
Under Knowlton Hall, right at the bottom, is contracted services, which is about roughly a $10,000, not quite increase, 9,000 something.
So that's what I was going to say, is that's why that's going to be a little confusing. So under contracted services overall, we've got Willie Waste, Otis, Orkin. What we've added is cleaning the Knowlton Hall. I'm sorry, we added cleaning service. Yep. For the kitchen, foyer, and bath at Knowlton, which was under this was under another category. It was under maintenance of town property before, and we've just moved this. So when all is said and done, you'll see a net difference of about, I think it was about $1,500 between two of these.
Yeah, so when we get when
Yeah,
we
well-
get to that, I had a little snarky comment about how we how we had cleaning supplies, but no one to use them.
Well,
So
save your
that
snark.
answers it. Good.
So, so let me just take you down a little further. All right, so. Under town office building operations and maintenance, we have part of our increase there is finally, we're going to replace the rotted boards and fascia. I think you call it fascia. You could correct me. That are down where the lower level parking lot entrance is, by the back door to the stairwell.
Yeah, I think it's a table board, but yeah, good idea.
It's been this way for a while. It needs to be fixed. We also have under one of the smaller lower categories under this is the telephone, and that's gone up by is going up by $1,500. That's the charter VoIP, a voice over whatever service, I forget the name of it. We weren't being charged for it, and they figured it out. I guess we haven't been charged for it for a couple of years. And if Cheryl can volunteer on here, I believe we absolutely have to have this voiceover service.
We'll do our phones are VoIP, they're voice over internet protocols, so it's necessary to pay charter for the lines we use in order to access the phones.
Cheryl, what does the voiceover mean? What does it do?
It goes over the internet rather than through phone lines.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, because I couldn't remember, and you'd think I would from IT. We were being charged. They finally caught us, and we're now going to be charged for it. So overall, there's a $22,750 increase in that department. Then maintenance of town property. I'm going to go down a little further. On this one, there is a bit less. That's because we moved the custodial services that the amount we had in there for custodial services of $8,427 was moved up to where you saw the increased amount in Knowlton.
Yep.
We also have under here a subcategory of contracted services. And one of these, the thing that we're adding in here is cleaning the old post office weekly. That was being done before at $12 an hour by a part-time employee, and we no longer have that employee, so we need to have somebody doing that. So, and we haven't started this at this point. So going into
Is this over concerns of COVID, Catherine, or is this general practice, good practice anyway?
well, what I'm thinking, the thinking is that when it's used, it needs to be cleaned. Okay, and if it's not being used, it needs to be cleaned every once in a while.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, then the senior center, not much of an increase. This one has to do with the CPR class that's offered for seniors every 2 years. We have to update our certification in order to also maintain the defibrillator that we have at the senior center. So that's $1,918 increase. Okay, Board of Finance, there's a small increase of $450. Let me get you here. And that has to do with, where are we? Another 160 for recording secretary and 340 for consultants. Okay. Assessor's office. is a reduction of $315. Board of Assessment Appeals went down by 540. Tax collector went down by $10. That woman runs a tight ship. Okay, finance department. Okay, in this one, we have an increase over, a decrease of $10,121, another one that runs a tight ship. But I do want to point out that we had our data processing costs. The estimate has gone down by $12,027. And we do have an item in here for financial and other professional tech services that has to do with the new system. And it's important, one of the things that really didn't happen as part of the training, and it wouldn't have been timely anyway, is that we will need to have some training done for the end of year reports, end of fiscal year, the filings that have to be done. So we have added, let's see, $2,500 for that, and that includes year-end reporting. Cheryl, if I make a mistake, let me know.
It's actually for calendar year and fiscal year,
Yes.
because we were having neither, that we could have training on.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Okay, town clerk. We have a couple things in here. We have under, make sure I'm looking at the right thing. We have for assistant town clerk, we have $2,500 we added in, and that is to do support regarding things like absentee ballot. We have more of those than we've had in the past, so there's a lot of work there. We also have some equipment repairs just for 100 of the map copier, the typewriter, the printer, peripherals. And we have some reductions that happened in conference dues and data processing. We also have, this is where that COT system that I mentioned in the overview comes up. The COT system is a system, if I understand it correctly, where we record information, and the thought with this, first of all, its end of life is August 1st. So we need to we need to do something. And the thing is that the COT system is actually not a stable system. So there's a lot of downtime with it when Sherry's trying to work with it. So this is to change to the IQS system, which is a stable system. It's self-serve, so people can go in and it can be set up to accept credit cards, things like that. So it's just a much better system for some of the things that we have in our town clerk's office in the area of indexing and recording.
So, Catherine, does that have anything to do with like the building department or the tax office in terms of credit cards? Is it anything like that? It's just unique to the town clerk's office?
I believe so. Cheryl, if you know anything different, let me know. But it's my understanding that it is something that would be used for things like everything from dog licenses to other types of things the town clerk takes in.
Okay.
It's for all of the land records, Chuck, for recording all of the land records. So anytime a piece of property is sold or a name changes for someone who has property, this new system will do a better job with the dog reports. The current system is very antiquated and hard to use and not able to be accessed by the public. So I think she's looking to bring on board dog licensing, online dog licensing as well.
Yep.
So it's a big system. It's a really important system.
So does this help with like attorneys being able to file, or do they still have to march in and?
No, e-file is already available, and then
Okay.
the monies are they do it through a company, and the monies are deposited into the general fund, and then every morning we let the town clerks know how much money we have received that day electronically. They also, and CA also does it, but I'm sure this new system will be better at it. You can look up land records online and make copies, and there is a charge for the copies, just like if you walk through the door. So they do pay us for those copies too, electronically.
Very good. Oh, that's great. Good.
Yes, we're coming into the 21st century. Okay, so let me just make sure I didn't overlook something. As town clerk. Okay, election expense. Election expense, we have an increase. Let me just see here. Sorry. We have an increase of about 3,082. This has to do with part-time salaries in support of it. We have election supplies, and some of that has to do, definitely election supplies. Okay.
Yeah, and then that's because we're anticipating multiple referendums. Correct?
Well, the multiple referendums are happening this fiscal year.
Right.
We hope.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. I was on the wrong year. You're right.
Please, 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 God, get us back on track to have our, like a single referendum, hopefully a single referendum. That would be good. Okay. All right, emergency services. No increase. Thank you very much. Okay. Public works. We'll kind of take that as a one fell swoop here.
Yep.
Okay, so with that, we have under roads and bridges, we have some increases. And it really, it nets out to 6,000. We have bridge maintenance, an increase of 1,000, tree removal, and I can't see what the other word is here. Tree removal, oh, and a replacement. That's 3,000. And salt and ice control, 2,000. And then nothing in DPW building maintenance and repairs. And then maintenance of equipment. We have nothing in there. So the total is a $6,000 increase overall for public works. Recycling the transfer station. This is one of those nasty ones. So our waste increase in disposal and fees is $35,000 increase.
Yep.
Then we have also a change in vendor for our household chemical, which is our estimated increase in disposal fees. I can't remember how many towns share the costs for this. It's done, the site is over in Willington, but so we're going up about $1,304 there. Okay. All right, contributions to area agencies. Right now, all we have is dial-a-ride, $60. We have not had received requests from all of these agencies, so we left the dollars where as they were.
I don't know if, just as a little side note, just because I think the way we're doing it, I will, probably not circle back to this, but one of the things I wanted to point out to the board was under, area agencies, one of the ones that really, in essence, shocked me was the Access Community Action Agency. Boy, what a deal we get on that. For our $1,000, if you look at what they provide, it's very impressive. I think it's roughly about $60,000 worth of support.
Too bad we can't put a little gold star next to them.
Yeah, that one's really, they had a pretty good little presentation. So when you guys, look through, when you get to the part where the area agencies are, take a read on what the Access Community Action Agency does and the support that they offer. I think that, if I'm pulling this off the top of my head, but I think it's like 120 people that they help with, or 120 households.
Thank you. Okay. Rolling down here. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Sorry.
Okay.
Where did I go? I don't know why that did that. Give me a second.
There you are. Yep.
And I just want to pull this over. Trying to pull it over.
Just click on the little triangle there in the middle of the bar.
That's what I was, oh, very good. Thank you. Was that Martha?
Yes, it was.
I'm keeping you, thanks. Okay, let's see, agent for the elderly, I think is where I was.
Yep.
And in that case, no change. There's been no request from the agency for program request under there. So we're assuming it's the same. Commission on Aging, same thing. No change. Sexton, we have a small change in the part-time salaries of a change of $800.
That was to hire an assistant.
Could you, I'm sorry?
That was for an assistant.
Oh, for an assistant, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, let's get down to here. And then we get to planning and zoning. And actually, it's been interesting. I was looking at something, listening to something. Forgive me while I get my bearings again. Planning and zoning, here we go. A couple things. I did notice, I haven't talked to the chair on this, but I did hear something about something where it sounded like the state was going to be pushing for the people who are on planning and zoning to get more training. And that came out in a meeting I was in this week. But what they do have on here is they are required to make sure that they put together an affordable housing plan that must be done by July 1st, 2022. So that plan, originally they were thinking it was going to be about $5,000, and they were able to cut it back to $4,000. And they're going to try and capitalize on whatever NECOG has, and they're also working with some of the guys that are working in other towns, some of the people on our staff that we have as part-time, and capitalize on whatever the other towns are doing as well. All right, Zoning Board of Appeals. This is probably pretty dry for the rest of you, but it's really exciting for me, just so you know. So that one is a $570 decrease. Then inland wetlands and water courses, We have a $1,700 increase, and it's primarily, here you can see under professional and tech services, and also under, no, basically under that. Oh, and I'm sorry, and under conferences and dues. For a total of 1,700. Okay. Rolling merrily along to the Conservation Commission. Which has a decrease. A decrease was in the area of conservation program expense, a decrease of 225. The building department, we have quite a decrease, and that is because we brought in a clerk, building clerk at a lower salary. So that was a $15,820 savings. And then we have some other savings in mileage and postage and whatever. And then we have an increase in books and subscriptions, and that's code updates. So the overall decrease is $14,815. And let's go to economic development, which is no change. Our Water Pollution Control Authority, we have no change in that. And by the way, I believe we are required by statute to keep this authority open. So that's why we have $5 in each of the categories. At some point in time, I'm not sure, I don't have enough history on it to understand it well enough. I believe maybe it gets closed down, but I think there's a process we have to go through to do that. Cheryl, is that your understanding as well?
I have no knowledge of the DPU, of the Water Pollution Control Authority.
Okay, thanks. Then you'll have to trust me on that. That's one I talked with Chris about.
Yep.
Okay, Ashford Historical Properties. Whoa, how'd I get there? Hang on.
Yep, that's where you are.
Here. Historical Properties, nothing there. Since there's nothing there, that'll drop off next year. Is that correct, Cheryl?
It will.
Thanks.
We can add it back in, but it won't show up because there isn't anything to show.
Good. Ashford Board of Education, I haven't put the figures in here, or we haven't put the figures in here. That'll happen once you make a decision. So the Region 19 Board of Education, the last I had heard, they were talking about a $354,000 decrease, but I'm sure it's changed a little bit at least since then.
I think we'll be relying on Wellington to get us there.
Aha. Okay. All right, and then we hit employee benefits. And under here, we have, let's see, decrease in Medicare. We have employee health insurance going up $17,918, and that's based upon the initial estimate from the vendor, which is 10% rate increase. We have a small decrease in life insurance. Okay.
Catherine, I think, I don't know who's doing the negotiation, but I think you and the school negotiate together on the insurance. And when do we get that to be a solid number? Do you know?
Cheryl, you have more experience with that than I do as far as when we get to the bottom line.
We just received an invite to a meeting on March 17th, so that should be our final figure. Martha, I
And
think you got that invitation too.
And Cheryl, at least my experience has been that they usually drop that at least some nominal amount anyway.
They usually do, but our numbers are higher than they have ever been, so it's anybody's guess. They're
Okay.
hoping that it does go down considerably because UHC is trying to keep or trying to bring in and keep municipalities. They want that piece of the market, so we have that going for us, but it is
Yeah.
anybody's guess.
And that would affect both this budget and the school's budget, at least nominally.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
Martha will be she's in those discussions.
Yep, good. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and let's see. All right, going down to insurance. When I say insurance, I mean the insurance here, general liability. We have an increase in this one. I'm not entirely comfortable with what we have here, but I don't know, you know, it's only an increase of $750. The thing is, we need to add our cyber insurance to this. You know, remember we need to get a cyber insurance policy.
Yes.
Mhm.
And one, based upon when we get it. First of all, if we have it in place for this year, then it's that the charge comes out of this year's money. Okay. If we have it in place before July. And then what will happen is, let's just say that we have it in place for March or April. Let's say April. And which I think we should do. So we'll have to pay in April, and that'll come out of this year's money. However, the renewal will be the following April, which is within the fiscal year 21-22. And we don't know what the rate's going to be at that time. We don't know if it's going to go up a lot. We're just not sure. And I can't remember, I think it was 7,770 split 3763 between us and the school, the town and the school. And that would be for the upcoming, for if we put it in place in April. Something like that. Is that correct, Cheryl? You're on mute,
Yeah.
but it always makes me feel good when you nod your head.
Well, it's quicker to nod my head than I think, well, I think they'll get it if I just nod my head, and then they don't. So I have to move my mouth.
Okay, we're gonna have to use those head signals. Anyway,
Yes.
so that's what I believe it is, and all of this is dependent on getting our application in and trying to get this in place. But then when it comes to next April, if you will, then we don't know what the rate's going to be. And because I can tell you that this was quite the topic of conversation in NECOG, the NECOG meeting I was in, and another meeting, because the other towns are hitting the same problem. They were getting their $1 million of coverage for free, and now they're having to pay. And so they've been able to, you know, a couple of them been able to work out a couple deals, but they're kind of scrambling because they realize it's important to have.
Yep.
So they know it's going to go away for them. Let's see. All right. Then going down here, general, I'm sorry, down to debt payments. Our debt payments will decrease by $10,575 for this year. That's debt payment on the principal and the interest, which is good. Contingency, we added $5,000. We haven't worked through aspects of what our negotiations will be negotiating with the union. That's something where we kind of we don't have figures to work with at this point. So we just upped it by 5,000. And then as we go down to other financing sources and uses, we have the volunteer fire department. They've asked for an increase of 6,619. That's for insurance and additional insurance and online, I'm sorry, increase in insurance costs and online training that's COVID related. Okay. And then we get to the recreation fund. And this gets awkward for me because some of it's fairly complex in terms of how this works, as far as I can tell. It's not necessarily a one-to-one on, when you're looking at it on paper, it's not necessarily a one-to-one on where grants are and that kind of thing. So it's a little bit buried in it. I don't know if Cheryl can help me out with it. The same thing goes with youth and social services, but I can tell you that their increase for the recreation fund is 7,892. And for youth and social services, it's 9,844.
So recreation, primarily the increase is because they historically have estimated their program income much higher than they actually ever are able to collect. So that was made up for by increasing what they will get from the town. With youth and social services, that is because in the past, the CARE grant, the primary mental health grant that the school gets, Melissa, excuse me, Melissa would do that work, and then the school would transfer that grant to the town to pay for Melissa doing that service for them. But the state discontinued the grant.
And they discontinued it before now. I mean,
They
it wasn't
did.
this year. It was discontinued certainly during this year, because that's what I mentioned during, I think it was a Board of Ed presentation, their Board of Ed presentation, that the town is picking up the cost.
Mm-hmm.
So can I ask a question? So when we're looking at this, what I'm seeing is account number 110 92,5995000 blah blah blah. When I look back under the worksheet, it's named Ashford Youth Services Bureau. Am I looking at something different, which is 225-4800?
You're looking at the fund sheets. That was the official name of the fund, but we no longer, we used to have a youth services bureau. The state required it, but they don't require it anymore, and the fund was never renamed. So whatever that says is Ashford Youth and Social Services. Oops, sorry, Mark.
So
you're looking at just the 225s, Chuck?
Yeah, exactly.
It says Ashford Youth Services Bureau. That was the name of the fund when it began.
Okay, so when I'm looking at this page, what I'm seeing are totals of like 60,000, 70,000, 70,914. That doesn't relate to this page, correct?
No, if you look at the second page of revenues, 225,48,047,110, youth services from general fund. Each of these separate funds, animal control, youth services, and recreation, will have that in their revenues from general fund. You see it?
Oh, yeah. Okay, yep. I see, yep. There it is. Okay. I will probably talk to you at some point a little more about this particular detail, because it's I see now the correlation in numbers, but I don't quite understand why it's like this. So I'll talk to you some other time about it.
Okay, sure.
I'll sit in on that too. I've already been through it once and I haven't fully grasped it.
Okay, very good.
Okay. All right, what else do we have here? The Animal Control Fund, no increase there. Babcock Library. So in 2019 and 20, they received $185,000 and they spent $185,000. 2020, this current year's budget, I'm not sure why, but they were given $175,000, which was $10,000 left. They use that money in payroll. It's my understanding when I look at their detail. And so this is where they have requested to have the $10,000 restored.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so other financing resources with all of that goes up $34,355. Okay. So I'm in the same budget package you have. So would you like to review revenues under the various?
Yeah, actually I would. That's a great idea.
Okay, very good. Everybody hang on to your seats because it just gets more exciting from here. We'll figure out where to go to.
So in your budget books, it's so for my board, in your budget books, it's towards the end. It's if they're all done the same, it's the clear tab just before the last blue tab.
Oh, sure. You're telling them by tabs. I'm flipping through without having the tabs. So I'm going to do my best to get there. I think I end up going to, is it Ashford Youth and Social Services first?
It's intergovernmental is the first.
All right, let me, before I start making people look at the screen, I don't want to throw anybody into a seizure. I'll start flipping through. Let me just make sure where I'm going. Revenues. So what I have, okay. So you said intergovernmental?
Yeah, so the first line is the telephone access grant.
Okay.
Under intergovernmental, yep.
Okay. You are right. Close your eyes. Is this where we are?
Yep, there you are.
Okay. So this is where I will probably need a little help from Cheryl. What we have, looking at the LOSIP, whoops, what am I looking at here? Looks different to me. Telephone access. Look in the wrong place.
Yeah, no, that's the right place. That's where I'm at. So in fact, under telephone access grant, the actual of 1920 was 6,521. We budgeted 7,216, which we're doing again. Cheryl, what drives that? How do we know, or how do we estimate what that's going to be?
We totally take a guess based on the previous year because we don't know. That's in lieu of taxes, that payment from for like SNET, well, or are they now Frontier,
Yep.
and Charter. Utilities that choose to have the state set their taxes rather than go through the towns. So
I
we
see.
actually found out last week what they're going to pay us this year. So there's no way that I know of to have that in advance.
So the safest, it sounds to me then like the safest thing to do is to just make the assumption that they will pay next year what they paid this year.
It didn't work out that way this year, though.
Yep.
They're paying it will be less this year, so we can bring that down if
Okay.
you want. I don't really understand how they come up with the figure.
Okay.
You see, it's
So
not a big difference.
yeah. So Cheryl, what you're saying is the actual of 6,521. We took a guess at 7,216. It's actually probably going to come in at 6,000 something
For 21, for this year.
For this year,
Yeah,
2021.
For this year, it is. It's coming in at 6,000 something. I don't remember exactly.
Okay. All right.
And so what we're saying is for 2022, we think it's going to be 6,000 something as well. Is that correct?
Well, as of last week, we think that, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
The other question I had under intergovernmental is what happened with the Board of Ed bus garage usage thing. Something changed there.
That was all me. Sorry.
I was wondering.
I missed that one. Sorry.
Okay.
There were so many revenues to deal with.
And then the newsletter one as well, correct?
I would get that from Sherry. Is that
All
not in
right.
there?
So we have a couple of adjustments we'll be making to this.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Cheryl, just to ask a question. So, because that I thought was sort of I'm again talking about the bus garage usage thing.
Mhm.
That's something where we would anticipate 6,000 from the BOE for that particular service, correct?
Yes.
Okay. That's good news.
One pocket to the other.
Right. I get it.
Actually, it isn't good news because we budgeted 3,600 because that's all we've paid for the last 3 years.
No, you
Is that
paid
accurate?
6,000. I just don't know where they came up with where they allotted the other money to.
Oh, because I mean, we went through our records and we paid 3,600 for the last 3 years.
I can let you know the journal entry I used to make it.
So, I mean, even if it's going from my pocket to your pocket, my pocket looks like it has less in it to give you. So,
Is there a hole in your pocket?
I just thought I'd mention that.
So it's interesting that you're both here. So Cheryl, how does something like this? Listen, I recognize it's a minor detail, but how do we get this resolved? You'll be able to come up with your journal entries. You'll compare them with Martha's, and then we'll land on a real number. Or how do we do that?
So we've been charging. We've been budgeting $6,000 since I think 2014.
Yep.
Maybe earlier. And Ralph used to figure out by percentage of square feet.
Okay.
How much it would cost, and it was generally close to $6,000. And then after Ralph left office, it was just deemed to be $6,000, regardless of how much we were paying for, telephone, electricity, heat, water.
Yep.
Yeah, not to flog a dead horse, but again, I mean, I presented actuals, audited actuals for the last 3 years that said it was 3,600. So again, I don't know where it's coming from, but if you want to add 3,000 more to my budget so we can pay you those 3,000, I'm all ears.
The problem is they're working from spreadsheets, so it's anybody's guess where the other last year's money, where the other amount was allotted to.
So actually, and again, Cheryl, you've known me long enough to know that I convert to very physical visuals. So how is that bucket of money that has to trudge from the school to the town, how is that requested? Like, how does that happen? How does the Board of Ed to know that they have to hand over whatever figure?
The first selectman would send them a letter saying,
And that happens every year.
it does, and then it's done with journal entries. We don't write checks to each other.
Yep. Huh. Okay.
Well, actually, what I do is I leave with $6,000 and I get mugged halfway between the school and when I get to the town hall. So that's why they only get 3,600. It's a long drive.
So
My
it sounds to me.
my secret life as a mugger is now revealed.
Yeah, exactly.
So Cheryl, does it sound reasonable that we can sort of, again, I recognize this is small potatoes, but is there a way that we can determine some clarity on this particular item?
What do you want? What do you mean by clarity, Chuck?
So
You mean if we charge them only $3,600 and they give me a MacBook Pro?
So in something like this particular revenue item, that seems to me that it should be a pretty hard number. In other words, the town should be expecting it and the school should be expecting to expend it. It seems because it is it is one pocket to the other. This doesn't seem to me that this should be a difficult thing, and I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I'm just saying it seems to me like this particular item could be something we all didn't have to spend a lot of time figuring out. And it sounds
Well, just give it to us for free.
MacBook Pro. How are you doing?
I mean, seriously. I mean, all it is funny money, guys.
Okay, so it sounds like they're going to work that out, make sure they understand what the entries are one side has and what the entries are the other side has. Is that correct?
Well, it
Yes,
sounds like we need a policy, right? I mean, we need an agreement between if we're charging the school for that space, that ought to be something that's sort of not difficult to figure out.
Well, there shouldn't be a difference between the numbers of, for example, what we're showing for actuals is $6,000. And yet what the school apparently is showing for actuals is 3,600.
3,600, yeah.
And so that's
the thing
where
I
we need
think
to
needs
figure
to be
out where
worked
that
out.
difference is.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I don't want to flog it anymore.
Please.
Please go for it.
Moving merrily along. Okay, senior center, let's see, did we have anything else under there? We had the newsletter revenues. Again, I don't know what those are. We'll have to do a check with Sherry. Okay, and then moving down here. On the intergovernmental with the disability. So down under intergovernmental, it's interesting. I'm not totally sure. I don't have a clear understanding of the disability exempt reimbursement that we're now getting that we didn't get for the previous or have for the previous budget, and the veterans reimbursement as well. Is that just something where it was an oversight in our previous budget, not having numbers there?
I get those figures from Kara. And I think, if I remember correctly, last year was really, really late. We were notified really late of the revenues.
Okay, so that's where the difference is this time. And going down to the tax collector.
So, Catherine, before you go there, and maybe I missed something. One of the questions I had under intergovernmental, and maybe this is a question for Cheryl, I'm not quite sure. Payment in lieu of taxes under the Ashford Housing Authority, the last audited actual supposedly was 0. So my question was, why do we have why do we have faith in this 10,000 revenue number? What's that based on?
We put $10,000 in there every year. It's for the housing authority. And some years they have an emergency and they cannot pay it and the town forgives it.
So how is that a revenue?
It's not if we don't collect it.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Cheryl. Could you explain that to me one more time then? So under payment in lieu of taxes, what we're saying is, I think this is what you said, is that there's a possibility that the Ashford Housing Authority might need to spend $10,000 on some sort of repair or something or other. And this indicates a repayment of that maybe expense.
No.
No? Okay.
They pay us $10,000 a year in lieu of taxes. They don't pay any taxes, the
Okay.
housing authority. So, but some years they have an emergency and they cannot afford to pay the town that. They need to.
Okay.
So they go to the selectmen.
And we waive it.
Yes. Okay. That makes perfect sense. Now I understand. Thank you.
Okay, going down to,
Catherine, if I may point out one more thing under that, the payment in lieu of taxes other is something that Yale School of Forestry and Environmental Services pays to the town for in lieu of any taxes for all of the land that they own in Ashford.
yes.
So that's a voluntary payment.
Oh, wow. That's great. I didn't know that.
Thank you. And then we're at tax collector. And on here, what we don't have in here, it makes it look a little skewed, is because we don't have the current year levy in there.
Yep.
So looking at the line items themselves, there's a prior year levy. I think over time, what's happened with our prior year levy is that it's decreasing because she's been doing such a good job of collecting on prior years. Is that correct? Cheryl?
The amount that is available to be collected, yes, is decreasing. Yeah.
Yeah, which, you know, for quite a while it's been good, but here's where we are.
Because she's so good at it.
Yes,
Yep.
exactly.
Yep. Nope. That makes sense.
Okay, and then when you look at the other numbers, there's not a marked change.
Yep.
Okay. Finance department, this is where we see the interest on investments going
I
down.
based that on what we have collected in interest so far this year. So we'll have a shortfall in that line this year for revenue.
Yep.
Okay. And then going down to town clerk. Same amounts. Oh, I take that back.
Yeah. So under open space recapture tax, again, the audit, and again, I'm just looking for an understanding because I don't understand it.
Yeah.
Under actuals, we had 10,796, but we're only anticipating maybe 4,000. But what's the driver of that recapture tax?
Open space recapture tax is when you file for PA 490 open space, there's a 10-year period where you can't sell or transfer the property. And if you do it before the 10 years, it incrementally, there is a charge for that or a fee for that, and that's the recapture tax.
So that 10,000, so somebody had open space that they ended up selling ahead of time, and so there was a penalty, and that's what that 10,000 is.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and we also see recording fee. We anticipate the revenue for that going up. Conveyance tax going up.
Out of curiosity, with the conveyance tax, what is the driver of that? That again, what's giving us an indication that it's going to go up?
Well, she probably based it on, you know what conveyance tax is. That's any time a piece of property or real estate is transferred, the state and the town get charge a conveyance fee.
Yep.
And so if you have one of the apartment buildings being sold, you'll get a huge bump in your conveyance tax. I think she's just anticipating that properties are moving and that there will be more conveying of property.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, transfer station, no change in that one for our recycling. Going down to, where am I here?
There should be planning and zoning's the next one.
Yeah, that's why I'm lost. Thanks. Okay, planning and zoning. Not easy looking at two documents at the same time. And with that, no change. Going down, general fund. I'm sorry, inland wetlands. Where are we here? Miscellaneous.
Yeah, so inland wetlands stays the same.
Yeah,
The building department, and I can attest to this, looks like it's healthy.
you've been helping with that. And education, it looks like the education assistance that was put in here, Cheryl, is it's the same as what it was because we haven't seen anything in terms of a change. I know that I'm looking at the governor, what the governor had proposed, and it was the same number.
Right, the governor's proposed figure for fiscal year end 22 is the same as fiscal year end 21.
Yeah. The other thing that, oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, Cheryl, what kind of faith do we have in that? That doesn't seem like that's going to be very solid, right? I mean,
I don't have a lot of faith in it, but
right.
Yeah.
There's another thing that was proposed as well, which was the federal ESSER 2 grant.
That's for the Board of Ed.
Yeah, that's, I was about to say that for the Board of Ed, that's for, I believe it's COVID related, $114,980. So I just want to see if Martha's aware of that one.
Martha, you're on mute.
Yeah, no, yes. I don't know that it's that high, but there's some constraints around it, but we are definitely aware of it.
Thank you. Okay, and then that takes us to the end of the revenues.
Yep. If that was very good, thank you. And then Catherine, if you wanted to talk about the capital budget next, that would be great.
And do any other board members have questions about the general government budget first?
I do have a question, Catherine. This is Judy. For the fire department, you said there was training for COVID-related abilities for the town.
If I understand correctly, there's online training. Yeah.
Online training. So does the state funds that are coming out for COVID-related coverage, would that cover the training for that?
No, not the ones we were talking about when we were talking about the what I call the ESSER ones that we were just talking to Martha about, because that's specifically for the school. I'm not aware of any additional monies coming to us for COVID at this time. I don't know if Cheryl is. And I think we have Wayne on. Anyway, so in their write-up, they do provide the information about what that cost specifically and what that training is.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay.
I have
Catherine-
lots of questions on the general government stuff. Do you want to go into the nitty gritty details on that now, or do you want to finish doing your presentation on all the components and then we'll go back through and get into the weeds?
I leave that to your chair's discretion, your board's
Yeah,
discretion.
John, why don't we ask the questions on the general government budget now, and then we'll tackle the 5-year capital plan on its own. So if anybody has questions, you know, so, and we'll start with John because he's asked, you know, let's ask those now, and then we'll deal with the 5-year capital on its own.
Okay, I'm just going to go back and run through the pages. I'm just starting on the first page of the general government here. I'm in Knowlton Hall. Significant increase in electricity.
I'm looking at Knowlton Hall and I'm not seeing a significant increase in electricity. I'm seeing that we had a budget of 9,250 last for the current year, and we're asking for the same amount for the new year.
Right. And going back a year before that, though, we were at 6,300, and that was the actual. So we don't have actuals from last year from that budget change, but that's what I'm curious about.
The only actuals we have are those which came out of the audit. And the audit was as of June 30th, 2020. So it was the fiscal year 1920. So that's what's in the left-hand column. Cheryl, do you have any sense of why the electricity went up as much as it did between 2019 and fiscal year 2020 and fiscal year 2021? Any thoughts? I'm not sure. I want to say
I would have to go back and look, but my suspicion is that it had been underfunded in previous years.
but what I want to do is I will make sure to research that and get you that answer. So give me a second. I just need to write it down. Okay, Knowlton Electric.
This is Jesse. I'm just looking at the previous years where the actual for 2018, 2019 is listed, and it's 7,743. It would actually drop in 2019, 20.
But we were talking about the electricity on the
Yeah, at Knowlton Hall.
Yeah, and if you could see my little cursor here. So the actual was 6,279.
Yeah, and what Jesse just said is the year even ahead of that, because he's looking at an older book. It was up around 7,000 something.
Okay.
So it seems like this was a lower year than 1920 for some reason.
All right. We'll take a look.
Go ahead, John.
Okay. Let's see. Town office building, same idea. You know, budget went up significantly last year for water, but the actuals before that seemed to be right on target. Was there a reason why we had such a jump even last year for the price of the water?
Did we get charged a higher rate, Cheryl, by any chance?
The rate for the water did go up for the actual base rate. They charge you by the size of the inlet coming into the building. I don't recall what that
Good enough.
was.
Let me just write that down. Okay.
All right. Assessor's office mileage reimbursement. Last actuals are 177. Do we still have more room there?
Well, in 1920, the COVID had hit, so there were no, she didn't go to any conferences or their spring conference.
Oh, okay. All right.
Anything else?
Let's see, moving on. Board of Assessment Appeals. We pay them as elected officials.
Yes, they're elected.
How do we not get money? We
John,
pay
what
the
page you
selectmen,
on?
we pay assessment appeals. I want my cut.
John, what page you on?
He's on
I
page 4.
am, yep.
All right, thank you.
All right, now let's see, page 5. I think all those got answered already. All right, page 6. Do we have trees targeted for removal under roads and bridges?
I didn't ask him what specific trees. Do you have some in mind?
No, I don't. I'm just curious, are we anticipating, because last year, yeah, right, exactly.
Yes, we are
'Cause we're doubling. Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Salt and ice control. It seems to me, I'm still in the same budget on roads and bridges.
I see
It seems to me that I've never seen salt on North Road in the 3 years that I've lived here until this year.
I think that's
and then
generic.
What's generic?
I don't know that they use salt. Do they use salt?
They did this year.
You didn't read my article in the Ashford Citizen that was on the front, I think it was on the front page.
Isn't it
I must have missed it.
They use a special kind of salt. It's scientifically done, but yes, they use a mixture of salt and, believe it or not, molasses, because it has a chemical reaction that it does not damage the plants and things like that. And they were actually, Ashford was one of the first towns to use it. They started using it 10 years ago. They check out each storm as it's coming. They work with the materials that they have and figure out which ones are the best ones for the nature of the storm and what the timing is to put it down. And when they put that stuff down, they're putting it down actually ahead of time, in a sense, so that the ice packs don't form on the roads. They do the best that they can with the roads that we have, but that is how they do it. So you have a particular road that you're concerned about? Did you say North?
No, well, so my concern is the opposite. I prefer snowpack. And it's simply because the treatment that you add to the salt is environmentally friendly, but the salt itself is still not.
It neutralizes the salt. Okay. It's a chemical. I can provide. I'll get you a write-up if you'd like, and
that's fine, because I do snow plowing and I use treated salts too. Okay. And the treatment is one thing, but the salt, the sodium, and the chloride are still there. And we don't have storm drains in this town, so all of that runoff goes directly into all of our water sources. There are wells all over the state, all over many states, that are being contaminated because of sodium chloride runoff getting absorbed into the ground. So anytime we can not use salt is always my preference. I would much rather pay for studded snow tires than have to pay for a treatment system for every well.
Yeah, I don't think everybody can afford the studded snow tires. What I will do is I'll either get you and our public works director together, or I'll get a good write-up from him about what we're doing and make sure that we're clear about what the impact of that salt combination really is doing. Okay.
Right, because like I said, I've never seen this much salt on the roads until this year. And certainly this year, I've never seen pre-treatments on the road until this year. So that's what it surprised me.
Oh,
The other thing, Catherine, too, is for wildlife, the deer really like the molasses and the salt. So you might be in a blizzard and a deer sitting there licking that stuff on the side of the road.
I hope the deer is moving the snow out of the way, but
No.
thank you. I've learned more about this than I ever dreamt I would, and I learned more about it in the past, I'd say 2 months. So this is just some more. Thank you. And I will do the follow-up with our road foreman.
So John, with that particular question, was there a financial concern? I mean,
Yeah, I want to cut the salt budget to 0 is my concern.
I see. Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
Let's see, moving on. I'm looking at the Sexton. The cemeteries that we have in town, a lot of the older cemeteries, are they no longer accessible and no longer maintained? Because I see Dow Cemetery on North Road now has signs, danger, do not enter, all kinds of stuff like that. It's that and James Cemetery, there's no access to it.
Is that I'm trying to remember which ones are private cemeteries and which ones are not. And why did this get smaller?
I think for the Sexton, I think if we look at our annual report, I think there's a report in there, John, about the number of cemeteries that we have and how they're addressed. I believe that's in there.
That's fine. So the other thing I'm looking at is signs and signals and subscriptions and books. The last actuals we had for those was 0. So I don't know if we still need to keep as much money in those accounts as we do.
Okay, bear with me. I just made this smaller and I don't know how I did it, so I'm trying to make it bigger again. That you're talking about under what?
Under Sexton.
Under Sexton?
Yeah, the last 2 budget items.
Thank you. I'm just going to do it here for a second.
John, he overspent everything. So he had used up his budget and so didn't spend some of those. Is that 19, 20, 21? Yeah. So he only had, he was budgeted $15,050 for the year and then spent $15,009. So he only had
$41. He had a party.
left. Yeah. So that he had spent it in other areas, so didn't spend anything in those areas.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, moving on to the Conservation Commission. Same idea, looking at all the actuals versus all the requests.
Well, yeah, so
that's okay. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. A huge portion of what the Conservation Commission does is in the spring. And again, in the spring, they couldn't do the things they wanted to do because of COVID.
Okay, okay. Makes sense. Yeah, it'll be the same for economic development, I assume.
Yep.
I think that's most of what I have here.
If you think of anything else, you can reach out, John.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, John. Does anybody else on the board have any questions concerning the general government budget before we move on to 5-year capital? Angie, Garth, Jesse?
No, I just acknowledge I hear you, but I'm good.
Okay. All right, Catherine, I think we're set with general government. Thank you. And I think now we're on to the 5-year capital.
Okay. Let me. Just a sec. Okay. You have in your budget book And in what was put out on the website, the spreadsheet that shows all of the proposed capital improvement projects and the amount that's associated with them. It has headers for them and then the proposed, okay, for the ones that were approved by the Board of Selectmen. So I'm going to take you through those. And this provides you with some detail about them beyond what you saw on the spreadsheet. And this is also, I have a sheet already done up for you to put into your budget presentation that you do for the Board of Finance. Okay, that'll have all the descriptions. So the first is Public Works, their road resurfacing, $205,000. This is annual road maintenance, grading, shimming, paving, chip sealing. Funding is offset by state aid in the form of LOCIP and town aid road. Okay, at least. And then Public Works also has a 5-year lease purchase, first year being $40,000 for a mini excavator capable of over-the-road travel and of assistance that can be used for assisting with down tree removal, heavy lifting, and allow more efficient work on roadside storm drainage. In fact, I was talking to Joe yesterday, and it'll be able to lift the storm, actually lift the storm drains. That's how strong this thing is.
Yeah, good.
Okay. And as we're in these, ask, if you have any questions, just tell me before I move to the next one, okay?
Yep.
Very good. All right, so next, reval, the second and last installment payment towards the purchase and implementation of the equality assessment system. Why doesn't that feel right?
Did we pay one this year, Catherine? We had to do the first one this year.
Yeah, I think this description is not quite right. Yeah, we have 2 installments for the reval. One is being paid during the current year, and the second one here is being paid during the next year. And
Correct.
if I recall, the reval program is 5 years. So
Correct.
we have to pay ahead, so to speak. Okay. Ashford Volunteer Fire Department, $74,250, the second installment of their 5-year lease purchase on the fire truck. And it's not a fire ruck, it's a fire truck. And if I understand correctly, we expect to get that fire truck in February. Is that correct?
I don't know if Paul is still
They're not
here.
still on? Oh, okay. All right. Capital improvement plan for the school. So 90,000 for a 71 passenger school bus. Also, their steam to water boiler heat exchanger is obsolete. The next time they try to get it fixed, it won't be able to be fixed. So we recommend paying this, taking care of this and paying for it out of the Ashford School unexpended fund. Also, the roof replacement planning and design work. This is also recommend paying for this out of the Ashford School unexpected expended fund.
Yep.
Going on, town project, the Cadle property remediation, $275,000. This represents estimated costs for the remediation phase of the Cadle property project. Funding applications are being accepted by the Department of Economic and Community Development. So we're working on this now to get the application done. And then the second installment of a 3-year lease purchase agreement for the playscape. The HVAC system upgrade for the town office building, that's $20,000. I would like to speak a little bit about this. I've had some more conversations with Train about ventilation over the last month or more. And the while we want to upgrade this system so that it will allow us to be warned if the heat goes off or whatever. We've had a number of situations with the boiler where it's gone out, the flame has gone out, and the building starts to get cold and nobody notices it until, maybe when they come in on Monday, or if they're in working on the weekend. Or, Cheryl is great, she can hear the alarm go off down in that area. But we want to be able to know when things are not working right when we're not in the building. And in addition, so the system we have has gotten kind of antiquated, and this is an IT system. This is not a physical thing of going in and making changes in the walls and the vents and all of that. This is something that controls the HVAC in the building. Now, I've also heard of something else that I am looking at, and I'm getting another quote, or a quote. I should probably have it tomorrow or by next Monday at the latest. And it has to do with measuring the off gases in the building. When aside from the fact we have people working here now, and we have basically a set number of people, so how we set our vents and things like that are based upon the number of people working on each floor, essentially. That's a good rule of thumb. And we work with the HVAC company to figure out what's appropriate for that, based upon the square footage we have on the floor, hours of operation, the people that are on the floor. And because we don't have people coming into the building, we don't have that kind of variation that we will have when people do start coming into the building. When people start coming into the building, there will still be people out there that have COVID. That's just going to be unavoidable. So unless we stay closed forever. So there is something that will measure off gases, which is whatever is put off, carbon dioxide kind of thing off of humans. And so if we had a number of people extra down, say on the middle level, this thing will measure it, and it will note that, and it will automatically change the venting. Okay, what the air intake, I should say. Yeah. To keep the, as a good safety, I'm saying as a good safety practice. And I don't know what kind of viruses are coming down the line. I don't know how things are going to mutate, but to me, it seems like it might be a good investment. So I'm looking into that, and I will share with you whatever I find out. I need to share it with the selectmen first. But right now I'm getting more information about it. And what I did hear was it was $2,700, but I don't know if he was talking about it for each floor or just one cost. So it's not a huge number, but it's a number.
Yep, that's great.
Okay, town project, Pompey Hollow Park infrastructure. This is one where we have a grant that's coming to us, and this is to restore the sidewalks, curbing, drainage, and paving in the Pompey Hollow Park area. And actually, it's focused. I think most of its focus is right around the where the senior housing is. That's pretty torn up. And I think that's the last one.
So, Catherine, with the Pompey Hollow Park infrastructure, that 125,
Yeah.
There's an offsetting revenue, correct?
Yes, that's a grant.
Oh yeah, there it is. I see it. My fault. Very good.
Yep. Okay, and what you have on your sheet that's in all the budget books and all the things that are out on the web is that the total for this is $930,045. Okay, and
Can you
the,
say that again, Catherine? Sorry.
bear with me. Let's make sure, I'm sorry, what the Board of Selectmen approved, forgive me, I've got the wrong number for you, is $955,045.
Correct.
Looks like there's a typo in the fee you were provided. If you look at the column that says 2020, 2021, 2022 proposed.
Yep.
And it has a total of 930,045. That number is incorrect in there. The bottom line numbers are correct. And the one for what the Board of Selectmen approved to present to you is correct.
Yep, you're right.
And I want to compliment the Capital Improvement Committee. They really did a great job. It's a very knowledgeable group. And they went through all of these and looked at what they thought would be reasonable. They looked at where the funding's coming from. And I'm hoping that based upon the funding, that the Board of Finance will allow us to move forward with them.
I agree with you, Catherine. The other thing I would say is I thought this was one of the best years in terms of actually keeping track of the funding side almost as much as keeping track of the project side.
Yeah,
and that was really encouraging to watch.
And the other thing too is when it comes to the general government budget and what you're looking at, I would like to say that, you know, remember this year we're going to get a good break from E.O. Smith from Region 19 in terms of, you know, the number of students we have going, and Ashford's not going to have to pay as much as we've had to pay in the past. I mean, $355,000 less, even though they haven't finalized everything, is still a pretty great number for us. But our numbers are going to go back up again next year and the year after that.
To Catherine's point, in your budget books is Region 19's budget book. And what I would say is one of the very important pages is page 11 and page 12. And what's important about particularly page 12 is looking into the future. And I think part of what our board needs to pay attention to, and we need to let people understand, is that the position that we're in this year with Region 19 is going to be very similar the following budget cycle. So we are getting a break of like 350 something thousand this year that does not go into the future.
Right.
So even if next year we keep all of our budgets at zero, including Region 19, we will be incurring probably at least a mil to a mil 0.3 somewhere in there, doing absolutely nothing. So next year is going to be a bear with our budgets.
I think also it needs to be communicated to the public that the costs at Region 19, you know, that increase in terms of our students going there and everything, that is just based upon the students going to the school. It's not something where people are, you know, jacking up their costs. It's more along the lines of just for that, it will increase quite a bit.
And so Region 19 has also, again, this is something else I wanted to point out. Again, on page 11, there's a little bar graph. In Region 19, for years, had a flat budget. And it has been in the last, you know, 5 or so years where that slowly started to creep up a little bit, and it kind of leveled out for a couple of years there. And one of the reasons that they can offset that is because they have tuition students, and they have a significant number of tuition students. So it's important for our board members to understand so that you can relate that type of information to help our community understand in some ways why we don't have control over that. So I think the Region 19 budget book is a really, really valuable document, and it's very, very consistent year after year. It's presented the same way, and those 2 pages are important for my board members to understand. And so, you know, my hope is that you take a look at those and keep track of it.
The other comment I would like to make is about the general government budget. Is that you know, we know that you'll be looking at things and trying to be as frugal as possible, use taxpayer money wisely. We will work with whatever you decide. Okay, we presented what we feel is the best we can present, and but we also understand that you're trying to make sure that we stay on a pretty level keel as we go through. So thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. I think a very thorough presentation.
And if you have any additional questions, just send them to me or send them to Cheryl, either one of us.
Does anybody else have any questions for Catherine? So we have a public hearing coming up in April, so we have a bit of time. I guess, you know, the next agenda item is, you know, our board discussing the proposed budgets that have been in front of us. You know, the school's budget, the town's budget, the 5-year capital. And are we looking for any follow-up information? Do we want to meet with any particular, you know, town employee, you know, the road foreman or the rec department or somebody from the Babcock Library? Are there concerns that anybody has that we need to meet for just a quick clarification or you know, justification of their budgets? The other question I guess I would have is, I think we need to give both the town and the school some time to respond if we're feeling like we want to change something with these budgets. I will start with me, I guess. My initial reaction was that I thought that maybe for optics' sake, we should cut something from each of these budgets. However, upon really looking at both of these budgets, I personally feel that they're both pretty responsible. So I guess where I land is I would like, I think, to put forward the budgets that have been proposed, because I think they both, all three of them have been very carefully considered. It's not that there isn't space to move dollars from one place to another or whatever, but I just, my feeling is these things are pretty close. So I guess I'll just open with that, and I'd be interested in how others would like to respond. And you know, I'd like you to just sort of be honest with what you're thinking. And I'll just call out somebody and start with Jesse. And Jesse, do you have any thoughts, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, at this point, I'm not seeing anything that really stands out to change. You know, I've just, as you were talking about, if we go with this budget, which isn't that bad this year, with Region 19 being lower, but with no changes, 0% on all the budgets going into next year, we're raising the mill rate a lot. Just makes me really nervous, but I can't see any way to make a savings.
Angie?
Yeah, I agree with you, Chuck. I don't see any way changing it up at this point.
John, I'd be interested in your thoughts. Kopech.
Yep. Well, I'm in the same boat. I don't have any real objections other than salt to any of what's in any of these budgets. What I'm scared of though is next year. It's going to be a double whammy. No matter how we do this next year, we're going to get whacked for another 350,000 for EO Smith. This year's Board of Education budget was 3%, and it's just salaries and benefits. That's not going to change. And they've already said that this year is just a bare bones budget, and that there's stuff they want to do and stuff they want to spend money on, and it's just not in this year's budget. Well, that means that 3% for them is their baseline, and then it's going to be higher than that for any time they want to add something that they need to replace or that they want to expand on. So that's going to be huge next year, coupled with the EO Smith. So there's almost no way for us to take advantage of the savings from the EO Smith reduction this year.
John, can you repeat that, please? I was listening, but I space cadetted for a second. I want to clearly understand your last point.
My last point was just that we happen to balance out this year on the decrease from EO Smith pretty much matching the increase on the town and the Board of Ed side.
Correct.
So to the taxpayer, to have a neutral budget this year, it's not a real neutral budget, because next year it's a whack, and it's a whack from both sides. So we're going to double at least what we had this year as a benefit, but next year it's going to double as a cost.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you. You completely understand my concern for next year. And so you're absolutely right. If you take the increases this year, you're looking at about, and I'm just using very broad brush numbers, about 300,000, a little over, given the school budget and the town budget, and we're quote saving 350 this year from Region 19. I don't think it'll go quite up 350, but it'll be all of 300 anyway. So you're absolutely correct. We're probably looking at like a $600,000 to $650 increase next year, which if we use I've been using 300,000 roughly as a mill. We're talking about a 2 mil increase next year.
Right.
And
again, yep, go ahead.
I was just going to say that is, I believe that is incumbent upon this board to make that clear, that that's where we're heading. I mean, as you just suggested, I don't think we're going to have a problem passing this budget. I think this year's budget cycle is really starting to get everybody understanding what's coming next year.
Right. So the two ways I look at it are, number one, do you overtax the taxpayers this year in order to even things out and make it a smooth trajectory going forward? Or do you take the savings this year and hope that we can explain to every person in town why they're not seeing a tax increase this year and it's going to be a whopper next year?
Yeah, John, that's a really good question. I actually had somebody else ask me that, and I gave them an answer that I actually don't know the answer to. I made it up. I don't know that we can tax for the future. I don't know that we can have like boy, it's going to be a bear next year, so let's add another 100,000 or 200, 300,000 into our budget to be able to cover what we anticipate next year. I don't think we can do that.
So it wouldn't be taxing it in order to increase the general fund so that we can then spend the money next year. The idea would be pick a project, pick a capital improvement project that we can spend in one time so that it's in the budget this year, that project gets done, and then next year it was, that dollar amount was already baked into the budget. So even though that's gone, you're losing that addition next year.
Yeah, I understand the concept, but I'll have Catherine speak to that. Catherine?
Here we go. Capital improvement budgets are not part of capital improvement plan is not part of the budget. It's part of the spending plan. The budget is the general government budget, the Ashford school budget, and Region 19. When all is said and done.
Right.
Okay, so, and that's what we're taxing for. We're not taxing for the capital improvement budget. I mean, the capital improvement plan. That's money that's taken from, I'm thinking DNR, but I don't think it's that. It's a CNR. Same thing. CNR and from the the school's unexpended fund, which, by the way, was money that what the school was given that was taxed for and that they hadn't used. So then it goes over into the special bucket. So nobody's taxing for it again. It's just sitting there. It's already been taxed for. And so again, when we talk about the capital plan and doing a big project, that's not something that is part of the actual tax base, if you will.
Right,
John,
but there has to be a way that we can using the capital account was the wrong metaphor for me, but there has to be a way if we wanted to do it that way, and I don't think necessarily that we do want to do it that way, but that we could have something in the budget that we could spend in 1 year to get this.
As an example, we could buy 2 years worth of salt.
Right. Yeah, fantastic.
Well, can I just speak on the Board of Ed's behalf? I'm not allowed, I don't know if I'm supposed to speak in this meeting, but if you recall, we had page 7 in our budget, what was about $310,000 of things that we would like to do, but we can't do, and they're not capital expenditures. They are things that we can invest in our students now, whether you tax people this year or next year. At some point, these things are going to have to happen. So, I mean, there is clearly room in our budget. I mean, we pared it back. I believe it was 5.2% originally, and we brought it down to 2.98. There are plenty of things, you know, and in some ways there's sort of low hanging fruit for the Board of Ed to take on some of those projects and, you know, wrestle them to the ground. And that would smooth out your budget over that 2-year trajectory.
The problem is that would have the opposite effect, because a lot of that stuff, if we do it, becomes a recurring expense. We need to spend money on something that's not going to be recurring in order to.
I don't know. Our page, the only ones that could be recurring would be about 110 of teachers. Everything else was technology, integration of information systems, ongoing school maintenance, instructional supplies.
Martha, I think what John's referring to is really the MBR. So once we have it in your budget, it's really difficult for us to go in the other direction. So what our Board of Finance is always trying to balance is the advancement of our obligation, no matter what the budget is, to have to fund the previous year's budget. And so by increasing the school's budget by, let's just pick a number, 300,000, that is a 300,000 that keeps moving forward, as opposed to a one-time, which is what John was referring to in his example. But yes, I also appreciate you bringing up those projects, and that was actually a useful page to have in your budget presentation.
Well, and again, I don't think all 300,000 need to be done, but there are things you could cherry pick, and you know, what that $100,000 could buy this year is definitely something you're going to have to buy next year anyway.
Right. The minimum budget requirement is what destroys doing that for what my purpose is for what we're talking about here.
Yep.
Okay.
Because we can't remove it from the budget next year. That money is now increased for next year, and it defeats the purpose.
Yeah. Catherine?
Of course, you could increase the general government budget, but I don't have any brilliant ideas right now about what we could throw in there that is work, you know, that we could get ourselves ahead of the game, so to speak. And again, the mindset that we've always fostered is to pare it down as far as you can. I want to make sure we're not penny wise and pound foolish. We've tried to do things that maybe in a very even way here, but because we've struggled with some of the things that we could not get done before.
So Catherine, can I interrupt 1 second? One of the things I did want to bring up, somebody had mentioned to me, and I think it's a really valid question, is do we have a way to reach out either through the school or through the selectman's office to find out about MBR? In other words, I don't know that we actually have a firm answer that we're not going to have to pick up the slack because Region 19 is, 350,000 less. How does that affect our MBR number, and do we have to deal with that in some way?
I would expect that the schools would be able to sort that out between the two of them.
Yep. So who am I asking? Am I asking John Lippert? Am I asking John Lippert to ask Jim, or am I asking somebody at Region 19, which I suspect the Region 19 may have a more solid contact to be able to get that answer?
My approach would have been to have the two superintendents provide that information.
Okay, so I think what I'll do is I'm going to reach out.
I don't know if that's the right approach. I'm just saying that's what mine might have been.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm just sort of I have a great audience here of people that know stuff, and so I'm trying to sort of find out who do we count on to help us figure out this MBR conundrum that I would argue we should not have to deal with, but we may have to.
Chuck, I would say our state rep and our state senator would be the only ones that could actually get us the answer, because the answer is going to have to come from the state.
So Catherine, is that something that we would reach out to Tammy?
Yeah, and Tammy, when she met with the Board of Ed, did talk about MBR. I think when she met with your board too, didn't she?
Yes, she did.
I thought she talked about MBR there as well. She's pretty well versed in MBR, so I could do a reach out to her. And what exactly do we want from her?
We want to know if we're getting affected.
Right, because my understanding was that you could only decrease on a 5-year average. So we would only be able to take 20% of that $355,000 reduction.
John, it's gotten more complicated over the years, and I don't know exactly what it is now.
Shocker.
But there are, I know, right? There are a lot of factors, and bless you. And as you know, as you mentioned, considering several years, so I think that reaching out to Tammy is a good idea. We want to know what the MBR number is for 21-22.
And when we say what the MBR number is for 21-22,
what the minimum budget requirement is, and then we would deduct Region 19 from that, and the remainder would be what we would have to spend at Ashford School.
Okay, I'll follow up on that.
Yeah, I really don't understand how. Yeah, I don't understand how tuition paid to a regional district, which is going to be volatile, even falls into the realm of MBR. That makes no sense to me.
We don't pay tuition.
No, not us. Region 19 has tuition coming in.
Right, but we pay the share based on population, so it's essentially paying a tuition.
Jane, Urban?
So there is some information that I just found that lists the exceptions to the MBR. And one of them is districts that have experienced a reduction in their resident student count may look back up to a 5-year period to calculate their decrease in resident student count. The district can decide which consecutive years up to the last 5 years they would like to include in this calculation. However, the decline in student count for a given year can only be used one time to prevent districts from counting the same student count decline twice. When calculating an MBR reduction under this exemption, the district is permitted to reduce its MBR by an amount equal to the net reduction in resident students multiplied by 50% of its net current expenditure per resident student.
Which is why we want Tammy Nuccio to reach out to the Department of Education and give us a number.
Right, yeah. It's not really clear.
Yeah,
I don't think she can give us,
Shocker.
here's my concern. I don't think she can give us a number. What number would she be giving us?
Tammy could reach out to the Board of Education, to the State Department of Education, and I can't remember. There is a guy there. Well, I'm not sure that he's still there. There've been a lot of retirements, but the people there have, a spreadsheet. They can figure out for each, and they do every year, figure out for each town what their MBR is.
But we would have to know what we're providing. Oh,
they have most of the information. Anything they don't have, they can reach out to Jen and superintendent at Region 19 for.
I was going to say I'd actually recommend the superintendent at Region 19 be a good starting place, because I think, that's the person that's going to know.
I agree. And the other thing I would point out is, we're only going down 10 students in this year. I mean, it's it's, if you use that calculation that Jane was just talking about, I mean, it's like 75,000. It's not even close. Yet we are spending per pupil even more than we did last year.
Right. So my curiosity also on that was how often can we look back just one year? Because if we do it this year, then 2 years from now, when it starts dropping again, are we limited to only doing this once every 5 years?
So I think that the next, I haven't seen the Region 19 projections that you guys have, so I apologize if I'm speaking incorrectly, but from what I know of Ashford School, this year's current 8th grade has always been a challenge. Every time this grade gets to a grade, we go from having 3 teachers to 2. And then there's another grade that I think this year is in 4th grade, where the same situation is happening. They only have 2 classes, not 3. Every other grade in our school, until you get to middle school where things get kind of funny, but every other grade is in 3 classes and has 3 classes, with the exception of preschool, which again is funny because it's preschool. The current 8th grade and the current 4th grade, I believe, are the only 2 classes that the total size is small enough that they end up in 2 classrooms every year instead of 3.
So is what you're saying that at the point in time where they go to E.O. Smith, they move to E.O. Smith, those 8th graders will create a drop in our count of students going to E.O. And the 4th graders, when they get to that point, will also create a drop. So what you're saying is that we have this kind of I almost want to call it a little bit of a pattern that we seem to have, where we have, a couple of classes with maybe a 4-year difference, where they're lower numbers than the other classes. Is that correct?
So
that's what the current situation is, yes.
Yeah, so let me just make sure, again, Region 19 does a phenomenal job of laying this out. So at the bottom of their page, this year, we have 186 students. So I just bear with me and listen. This year, we have 186 students. Next year, we'll have 196. The year after that, we'll have 192. The year after that, we have 183, a drop of 10.
Yeah.
And then the following year, we have the same. But now listen, in relation to what happens with the other towns. So it's not only what we have, but it's what the other towns have. So this year, the current year, we represent 20.59% of the population. The year that we're in coming up, the 21-22 fiscal year, where we get this big advantage, we're at 18.43% of the population. Next year, the 22-23 season, we go back up to 22.3% of the population, and then we basically stay at 19.99, 19.02, 19.48, even as we drop down another 10 students, because it's in relation to the other towns as well. So when you look at the totals across the bottom, the current year that we're in now, there's a total of 952 students up there. I'm sorry. Yes, this year there's 952. Next year there's 1,009. The year after that there's 963, then 959, then 961, then 938. So you have to look at all of those numbers combined to understand how we are affected.
Right.
So even though we may have a big drop 4 years from now, they do too. So our percentage stays the same. We will be paying the same dollars.
And I don't have that in front of me right now, but the students that Region 19 tuitions in, they get tuition from them.
Correct.
They're part of the offsetting of costs at Region 9 at EO, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's why their budgets have been so stable for years, because I think Columbia is like 200 and something students that are coming in.
Right.
In fact, I think I have that here.
So does that those tuition students, do they also decrease the cost per student in the long run? I got a feeling they don't.
I would argue that they probably do, but what I would argue more strongly is that because they keep the population even up there, it allows the program to be consistent, and it allows the perceived quality of the education there to stay constant, which is why they keep getting tuition students. If they fall off, those tuition students can go, there's other schools that would be glad to take them.
Yeah, and from what I'm hearing, the schools were clamoring to get into EO.
Correct.
To tuition their students in there because it's considered such a good school.
Correct.
I'll also mention that it says school districts that are in the top 10% of all school districts, according to the Connecticut State Department of Education's Accountability Index, are exempt from MBR requirements.
Correct.
So if we can up our school, you guys won't have to worry about it anymore. So we should just increase our budget.
Yeah, nice try.
Clever.
John, do you have any more comments?
Sure. Why not? So my intention would not be to do something like try to raise the budget this year artificially just to lower the impact next year. It makes sense from certain perspectives, but I don't really think that it's financially solvent. Educating the town is going to be the biggest obstacle on this year's budget to prepare them for next year. And the two conflicting thoughts that I have in my head are, I have a hard time justifying our classroom sizes at the school. I have a hard time with 3 teachers for 1 grade with 12 kids per grade when we could have 2 at 18. I think 18 is still a ridiculously small class size. I also, being a former teacher, understand what a disaster that would be for the Board of Education, because we have such different student populations in each grade. Any changes that would be made there would have to force teachers to change grades constantly. because they'd be following the larger group to the smaller group, and it would be chaos. And I understand that. So there is a value to not creating that chaos. Ultimately, that's the decision of the taxpayers, though. But the other thing that gets me here is our mill rate. We have the highest mill rate of all of our border towns by between 4 and 10 points. And, you know, I don't know how many people understand how property taxes work on businesses, but it's really hard for me justifying the mill rate that I'm paying in this town on every hammer and screwdriver that I own when I could be paying 10 points less a mile from my house. So, you know, it makes a difference for attracting businesses. And if we attract businesses, then we reduce the load on the residents for the taxes. And, you know, there's trade-offs everywhere here. And I think this year and next year are going to be big focuses. Not so much this year when we could do something about it, but next year when it's too late, I think this stuff's going to come up, and it's going to be rough conversations.
Yep.
I just like to point out, I couldn't find my chart that lists the class sizes for each grade, but the Board of Ed actually isn't afraid to shift teachers around, and we do it, well, the administration does it on a regular basis, because we agree that consistently having class sizes of 12 may not be the most cost-effective thing for the town or for the school. You can ask the teachers in the school. My son, who's in 3rd grade, his 2nd grade teacher is now my daughter's 5th grade teacher. Shifts happen all the time. We're not afraid to do that. We don't shy away from that. But the small class sizes this year are the only reason that our students are allowed to be in person. And next year, the same situation will be in place until we can get a vaccine for kids. So I think those are important things to keep in mind. I think it's also important to recognize that, you know, this always comes up as a ding against the school when the issue is not necessarily the school's fault. It also is what you pointed out, John, the lack of businesses in the town to help carry the load. Mansfield teachers and Willington teachers per step make an average of $3,000 to $7,000 more than our teachers make. The reason you don't see that hit to the towns of Willington and Mansfield is because they have businesses that help carry that load. So yes, it's harder to attract businesses, but you know what? It's also harder to have a great school when it's all on the taxpayer's shoulders. So I think we just have to be careful about how that argument gets made, because it's not always fair, in my opinion, to just blame it on the school for, you know, hiring teachers and trying to pay them. Just my opinion. Thanks.
86% of your budget is salary and benefits. I can't help that.
No, but that's what it takes to run the school. We can't help that either.
I'm going to ask Judy if she has any comments.
Not at this time. I've listened to both sides of the story. I've listened to how much trouble we're in the future. I guess if we kept the budgets the way they are today, what would be the mill rate?
This is very, very super broad brushstrokes, but I think we can anticipate a very slight decrease in the mill rate. And I mean like a tenth or at the most 2/10 of a mil. But that's a complicated number that I can't pin down right at the moment. We just don't have quite enough information yet.
So basically we're almost doing nothing this year, but we're going to get smoked next year.
That's what I think we all have to be cognizant of. Yes. And I do think that, you know, all of our budgets that have come to us, I think everybody feels the same thing that John does. I mean, everybody's trying to sort of pare down as tight as they can. I mean, the school, in my estimation, came to us with essentially what they would consider as bare bones the budget as they could. Now, I'm not, I could say, I could make an argument. Hey, let's have the school trim 30,000, and I could come up with some line items very quickly that I would point to, but I don't think that's actually responsible. I think they've basically really kind of landed as tight as they can at the moment. So that's why I didn't say something like that. And I think we've been relying on the town for years to try to make a palatable mill rate, and I think this current budget is increased from the town side, but I think it's trying to address some things that we just kind of keep sweeping under the carpet. And I don't know. So I guess that's what I think, Judy. I think.
No, I get it. I get it. I was just wondering how much, so people always look at how much they're going to pay, right?
Yep.
And then we have to explain what's going to happen in the future.
So here's a couple.
I looked
things
at both budgets, and I'm fairly confident that they did a really good job. I mean, I'm pretty thorough when I'm looking at stuff, and I agree with everybody as far as the budgets. I'm just concerned about how to explain the future.
I agree. I think that's actually why I put this item in here, because I think that's really the issue. It isn't really exactly quite this budget. It's next year's. So I agree with you. It's a concern.
Exactly.
Garth, do you have any thoughts?
No, nothing other than what you mentioned, Chuck. I agree with you. Yep.
So I guess the last question I would ask is, Angie, do you have a thought?
Nothing to add on that.
Okay. I guess the other question is, I think I'd like to sit on this thing for a little bit before we actually, make a motion, as to what to go forward with. But I would sort of like us to sort of at least agree to let both the town and the school know that we've sort of settled, if we have. I don't know that we want to make a motion tonight to move forward with these as they are, but I think we should at least say that that's what we think we're thinking, if that's what we're thinking. So
Chuck,
a simpler way of saying this would be, if somebody thinks we should be cutting somebody's budget, we need to know that.
So Chuck, I missed last week's meeting for questions with the school.
Yep.
And there was one thing that I just wanted clarification on, and
Sure.
I don't know if there's anybody available, but
That's me. That's me.
Martha can do it.
Hi, Martha.
Hi.
For object 561 that talks about outside services.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2018, 2019, we adopted a under budget, right? So in 2019, 2020, we were kind of in the hole by 75,000 because we spent more than we had asked for. So then 2019, 2020, we had 167,452, and then we only spent 114. So we had an excess of 53,000. But then from 19 to 20, it jumped pretty significantly. from 114 to 266. Now, I don't know, did we have additional students in that time frame, or what happened that we actually exceeded, like, it was almost like $99,000?
So Martha, I can start answering this while you're
Yes,
looking for
I'm not sure
specifics.
that I have that answer, to be honest with you.
So
But
I
go ahead.
believe these are related to services that are for special ed kids, children that need things like speech therapy or other things that the school itself does not provide. And Cindy Ford does her best to predict, based on the current student population, what services will be needed each year. But students change, needs change, things change, and we are required to fully address any special needs that are presented through the students at the school. And so the budget for that is hard to predict reliably if the student population changes.
Okay, yeah, I was just curious because it was such a large sum that it had actually jumped from 2019, 2020 to 2021. I thought there were additional students because it was significant.
I believe there was also, and I can't remember the year that this happened, there were at least 2 students that we had been sending to other schools that came back into the school.
That's probably, yeah.
Which
that
ends
would
up
explain.
being a cost savings, although that would have shown an increase in that line item.
Okay, that would explain it if that's the case, because that's what I was thinking. It was somewhere along the line, 2 additional people got added to the sum because it was large.
Yeah, and what happens too, I mean, the reason we had this big decrease from what we, from what was proposed last year at least, was, they were going to outsource kids that have special ed needs or whatever, and then it's this enormous money. I mean, it's like $250,000 sometimes for these kids when they're outsourced. And when they're able to bring them inside and actually fund their education in a different manner, it's a lot more cost effective. But Jane is right, the number goes all over the place because we don't really know who's going to decide to leave the district with a special ed need versus who's going to stay. And so it's hard to predict.
Okay. I was just looking to see why, it just seemed odd to me. And then it occurred to me it might be that situation. I'm good.
Oh, okay. That was easy.
Thank you.
The other
Anybody
thing,
else?
the one thing I was going to mention, I don't know if this is going to be super popular, but when you're looking at salaries and benefits, I mean, salaries are what salaries are, and Jane is right. That's we're not paying as competitively as some of the neighboring towns, but I would say that our benefits are very robust. And I think there might be an opportunity as you renegotiate contracts to actually have employees take on a higher burden of their health insurance, because 10% is actually pretty low relative to other schools. And I mean, that number is huge when someone has like family insurance. I mean, we can pay up to like $20,000. And as I believe, I could be wrong, but I also believe that we end up giving coverage to people that are part-time. And that's another huge piece. And that is not, I don't think that's the norm in all school districts. So I know that's not really popular because everybody loves their benefits, but it's an extraordinary cost. And that number can be changed in our budget based on how it's allocated, who's shouldering the burden of that. You can't change the salary without getting rid of teachers, which I don't think is an optimal strategy.
Yeah. Thank you, Martha. Anybody else have any comments? I would like to sort of have a, unofficial, sort of, I guess I'll land on the same question I had before. Are we safe in having me say that we're comfortable with all of the budgets as they've been presented? And what I mean by that is we're not asking anybody at this point to cut.
I agree. Angie DeSanto.
Garth?
Yes, I agree.
Judy, what's your thought?
I believe they're fine the way they are.
Thank you. Jesse?
I agree.
Thanks. John?
No, but yes at the same time. I think it's such an unusual situation that we're in this year. I wouldn't go after the Board of Ed to change teacher numbers this year because we're in school full time because of the fact that we have so few kids in each class. I also like the fact that because things are so difficult for a lot of our residents this year, that taking this year as a zero essentially on the tax increase is a benefit. But the idea is that next year we hope everybody's doing well again because you're going to get whacked. And the reality is, after next year, when we're looking at the following year's budget, those class sizes might be an issue to come up.
It's
Hey, Judy,
Judy's
can
background.
you mute? I think there's background noise. Thank you. All right, John, thanks. And then, obviously, I think I've already made myself clear. I think we should sort of just land with, in a way, I'm sort of uncomfortable doing it, but I think it's the right thing to do, is to just sort of land with the budgets as they've been presented. I think everybody's, done as responsible a budget as they can. And I think it addresses a lot of varying needs. So as much as I would like to say we should probably try to get some cuts out of these, I don't think it's actually the right thing to do. And I think this year, unlike last year, we are going to send this to referendum. So ultimately, I think we're presenting the public with a responsible budget. And if they feel differently, they'll let us know through the referendum. I would probably be in a different place if we had to vote on it ourselves, like we did last year. But I think what we would be putting forward with these budgets as they've been presented, I think is the right thing to do. So I want to let the various groups, the town, the 5-year capital budget, and the school know that at this point we're not asking them to do much modification.
Don't forget, I need $2,400 to pay Cheryl. And that takes my budget to 3% from 2.98. I calculated it. Or she's going to decrease her revenue by 2,400.
Yeah, well, you guys are going to figure it out for sure. I guess the other question I had for my board, is there anybody specifically that you would enjoy hearing from as a clarity to their budget, or are you all pretty comfortable with where things are at this point?
I'm still waiting for the clarification on the one Board of Ed budget item from the last meeting, but
can you
not
reiterate it?
No.
I sent that out. That was sent out the day after.
No, I haven't gotten it.
The Board of, the thing about the.
Martha, you did send it out. I apologize. I will send that to John and the rest of the board, because yes, you did send it out right away. That's my error.
No problem. I'm not expecting anything to come out of that. It was just a curiosity. So.
Yeah, I will send that, Martha. You did do it.
Chuck, I had forgot about the question for the school too, was for what do you call it, an asset list. Do they maintain an asset list for all equipment that they have, and all the equipment that they remove?
Yeah, good question, Judy, and that was addressed, but what I'll do is I'll have Martha speak to that. I believe that there's a new program that they're starting to institute to be able to get a better handle on that. It seemed to me that the school was in agreement that they needed to be able to present not only to us, but more importantly to themselves, a more clear picture of that particular issue. But Martha, could you speak to that?
Yeah, that's exactly right, because anything that's over $5,000 is tracked by the town. And what was happening, based on what I could see, is that things were getting clustered. So like we buy, let's say, 6 computers at $1,000, it would be $6,000 and it was thrown over into the town as a capital equipment. But the reality is our stuff should be tracked as an individual item if it's under $5,000. So, I mean, I put in that budget actually a scanner and a software program so that we can tag every single computer that goes in and out and keep track of it. Based on what I've seen, no one's really owned the process. It was sort of like the tech guy said the office was doing it, the office said the tech guy was doing it. So we honestly currently could not tell you who has what computer in the school, pretty much. So I don't think that's not acceptable, which is why I put in, I think it's about $1,200 for a system so that when every computer comes in, it's going to be re-asset tagged, scanned, and we're going to update the asset list.
I'm glad you're looking at that. That's awesome, Martha.
Yeah, no, I was super uncomfortable with it personally.
And Jane, would you be able to answer to whether the Board of Ed has wants is encouraging more clarity on that front? And I guess what I mean by that is who is in charge of making that happen?
Yeah, so Martha might actually have more information than I do on that, but Scott Waddell is our computer tech head. And so my understanding is the situation is a little less dire than Martha may have made it sound, that Scott did have some tracking in place. It's just not as efficient or effective as we would hope it would be. So there are some Excel spreadsheet type things on where computers are, but not a great system. And so Martha's identified a great system that we can really help nail that information down and have a much better way to track and keep track of everything. But my understanding is Scott, working with Martha's office, would be responsible for implementing that. But Martha can probably clarify what conversation she's had with Scott about it.
Again, I think the superintendent needs to come down and actually allocate a lead on this personally, to sort of say, this is who owns it and this is who's working on it. To me, it's kind of like a task force thing that needs to happen. I don't have direct supervisory, authority over Scott. So I do think the superintendent needs to say, this is something we need to tackle, this is who's going to be the lead, and let's come up with a project timeline and make it happen. Until that sort of leadership steps up, I highly doubt anything will happen.
All right, that's a good answer, Martha, and that resonates with exactly my impression from afar. And so I would go back to Jane and say, my hope is that the Board of Ed is pressing whomever needs to make that decision so that it becomes. All I can tell you is outside of this meeting, I hear about this from people. Like, they've got this computer, they're all over, blah, blah, blah. I just don't want to hear it anymore. I just want to say, okay, they've got a system, this is what it is, and it works.
Yeah, and I will say that, we're in the process of hiring a new superintendent. And one of the things the board is really looking for in a new candidate is someone who has a bit more, a lot more visible presence in the school on a day-to-day basis than our current superintendent does. And it's something that's critically important to us because we do feel like there have been some things like this that have slipped through the cracks, and we're hoping will be remedied soon by the current superintendent and improved exponentially when the new superintendent comes on board.
Great, thank you. And I have to ask a question for one of my board members who's been pestering me about this and cannot speak for himself. What is happening with the superintendent search, and are we not only just looking internally, but are we hiring a group to help put forward applicants?
So
And
at this point,
I was going to say, and you know who's asking this question.
yes. Well, so at this point, we are not looking to hire a search firm. We did do some initial investigation into the search firm option, and it's a big chunk of change, especially for a part-time superintendent. So we're trying to get some additional information on what support we might need and who we would pay and how much we would have to pay to do that. At this point where we stand, and unfortunately I was here instead of the Board of Ed meeting,
Yeah.
at this point where we stand is that the Board of Ed has developed a job posting and a detailed job description. That was shared with, I believe Catherine saw it. It was shared with the teachers union. So we were soliciting feedback from folks on the priority, the elements we were looking for in the superintendent. We had hoped to have that published and out on the street by March 1st. But as a group of volunteers, sometimes things don't happen as quickly as we wish they would. And so I don't know tonight whether the decision was made that we were actually posting everything. But the plan is to do a search, a broad search. Internal candidates are welcome to apply, but the search is going to be publicly posted. CABE, which is the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education, has some available assistance they provide for this. Jen Barcelo is also familiar with where we advertised previously for the current superintendent we have. I also have a friend who's a professor at UConn and is involved in the superintendent training program there, and she's agreed to distribute the job description there as well. So our hope is to do a very broad search, try to find the best candidate, and have somebody in place by July 1st, which Dr. Longo's contract ends on June 30th. So we are committed to finding the best candidate and possibly doing some sort of CABE offers these interim superintendents that can help you out if we can't find someone that we're very comfortable with. So we are committed to focusing on finding the best candidate, not necessarily hanging ourselves with we need somebody by July 1st, because we do have this interim option that CABE can assist with.
That's fantastic information. I very much appreciate what you just said, and I will pass that along to the person that's been badgering me about it. I guess the next agenda item is second opportunity for public comments. I was wondering if anybody from the public, which I think is basically Jane and Paul, if they have any comments. Paul, I don't know if you're there. The next agenda item is agenda items for March 11th. I don't have any at this point. If somebody decides that they would like to have somebody come in, I would have to make arrangements for that. So I'm going to leave that open right at this very moment. I'm thinking we may end up canceling that, but I don't know that for a fact yet. I need to touch base with the selectman's office and so forth, just to kind of see if there's anything pressing that we need to deal with. As far as remarks for the good of the board, I just want to thank, like I do, unfortunately I sound like a broken record, but I really mean it. I really appreciate all of the people that are here and your efforts. It means a lot to me that you're as engaged as you are. and you're good people, so I appreciate it.
Thanks, Chuck. You're a good person too.
Thanks for your leadership.
Thank you. John, hold on one sec. Jane?
I just want to say I really appreciate hearing the way you guys deliberate about this stuff with the forward thinking and the, as a member of the Board of Ed, yes, but as a taxpayer, extra yes. I really do appreciate the foresight you guys have in thinking ahead, and I appreciate that discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. John, I need you to act on Carl's behalf.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. John's first, Judy's second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody oppose? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.